Hey class, welcome to week 6. So the point of today's video is going to be to start to transition from project 2, now that we're wrapping that up, into project 3 to see how some of the work that you've been doing so far kind of is building towards your larger projects, towards 3 and towards 4. And so today what I want to do is I want to talk about how we're going to be making that transition. First, though, I wanted to just discuss briefly some of the things that we've been working with over the last week to talk about some of the things that I've noticed, some just kind of basic housekeeping stuff. So first up, I want to talk about the rough drafts that you guys submitted. So I've looked through some of those, and I'll be making comments on everyone that's submitted. So far, I really like what I'm seeing. It seems like you guys have a kind of a firm grasp on what this genre analysis thing is, what it looks like, that you're staying on task, and that you're producing good work. I also like that I'm starting to see some good kind of peer responses, some good feedback given to each other. So I'm really happy with that because it's really important to kind of practice that kind of collaborative work, to practice that kind of giving and receiving feedback and things like that, because that's a difficult thing to do. And so I'm really glad that you guys are taking advantage of that. However, as I said in my email, I think it was last night, many of you are not doing that, either not submitting a draft or not participating in peer review. Now, not only does this negatively impact your grade, but it's also doing you a disservice by not giving you the opportunity to develop your writing, to practice giving and receiving feedback, and to get feedback from me as well. And so make sure that you're staying on task with that. The other thing that I want to point out is the blogs. Again, the blogs that I've read so far look really good, but same thing, some of you aren't doing them. It's going to impact your grade, but it's also going to kind of hinder you when you begin these projects, because the blogs really are the kind of first stepping stone to producing a well-polished project 1, 2, 3, or whatever it is we're working on. Because it's in the blogs that we're really starting to work with the kind of foundational components or ideas of the assignments. So make sure that you're doing those, or else you're just kind of, again, doing yourself a disservice. All right, so that said, let's take a look at week 6. Now, as I said a minute ago, the goal of week 6 is to transition from 2 to 3, and we're going to look at project 3 in just a minute. But let's take a quick rundown of what we're going to actually be doing. So, obviously your main concern for this week is to finish project 2 and to turn that in by Sunday by midnight. But again, at this point, you have everything you need to complete that assignment, and so we can start to think about these ideas in a different context. And so let's take a look. So you're going to be reading a couple things. The first thing is the assignment description for Project 3A. The other thing you're going to be reading is this article mining text and reading to write, which is, again, just a good resource to have when you're thinking about how to use text in your writing and how to figure out what in a text do you want to bring out or what text to choose, things like that. You'll also be reading what are called launch texts, and we'll talk about those in a second. Completing your blog and uploading your draft. Okay, so before we get to the details and all those things, let's take a look at the Project 3 assignment description. So as you know, you'll go to your weekly folder in Project 3, and this is what you'll see. Okay. Excuse me. So Project 3 has two components. There's a Project 3A and a Project 3B, and you're going to be doing these things concurrently. They're actually kind of two sides of the same coin. It's not extra work, really. It's just it's just the way we do this project helps you kind of work through your research in a couple different ways. But for now, all we're going to focus on is Project 3A. So what 3A is it is what's called a literature review. And if any of you are unfamiliar with the idea of literature review, what a literature review is it's basically a collection of resources, books and articles and such that are all kind of dealing with the same or a similar topic. So, for example, you might collect 10 sources that are all discussing, stem cell research or something like that. And the goal of a literature review is to bring all these things together to show how these sources are related to each other, how they're talking to each other, how they're arguing with each other, to really essentially outline the conversation that's happening between these sources. And so let's take a look at the actual description. So when people conduct research in disciplinary and professional context, they do so in order to answer questions related to a specific need or problem. And we're going to get back to these questions in a minute because we're going to be refining the research question that you made in Project 1 in order to kind of launch us on this project. So literature reviews, as a research genre, collect, organize, and synthesize the relevant secondary research in a systematic way that provides highly condensed and heavily documented information related to your particular question or problem. The primary purpose of the review is to provide your audience and or collaborators with an overview of what experts have said about the problem or research question under investigation. So again, you're going to be beginning with a research question about a particular topic. So for example, you might ask something like, what are the, economic costs of stem cell research? Like, I don't know. And you go research what people are saying about that. And so those sources that you find are going to be essentially trying to answer that question that you have. And you're going to be collecting those and tying them all together. The assignment requires you to move through the messy and recursive stages of researching, analyzing, organizing, and writing in order to draft formal literature review. Throughout our work on this project, you will have to decide what information from what resources to include. This will also require exercising your critical and creative thinking capabilities to draw parallels and connections between the problem context of your question and information from the sources you find. Okay. So essentially, you're going to be developing questions about topics from your group that you're interested in, and these can and should be the kind of same topics that you were thinking about in Project 1 and 2. So remember when you first identified some of those major topics, you asked some questions. We're going to continue to refine your approach to those topics, or if you choose, you could do a new topic related to your field. And just because if it's unclear, again, we're talking about topics and questions about the discourse community that you've been analyzing so far. So if you have been talking about like the medical field, what are some questions that you have about some of the major topics in that field or major problems? Okay, so here's the actual prompt. The literature review synthesize information, compare and contrast ideas, and clearly describe the relationship between well-cited texts. And so essentially what you're going to be doing is you're going to be taking a lot of these different articles and books and showing how they overlap, right? And showing how they, what they say. And so again, our focus, kind of like in Project 2, is going to be more on what are these authors saying, and less on your interpretation of them, okay? What this is going to do is it's going to allow you to make a really coherent and compelling argument later on. But we'll get to that later. And so not to read too much, obviously, but you'll be revising your initial research questions about the topic or area of interest that you identified. And then you'll be using your kind of research strategies you've been developing for keyword searches, for using your databases, using research guides, to find more sources that are dealing with this topic. Okay. So that's Project 3. We're making a literature review that collects a lot of information and data about the topic that you're interested in. So that's the ultimate goal. And so what I want you to do for this week is to kind of read over that in detail and just make sure that you're understanding these things. Now, as you're doing this, you can get started on doing this kind of research, on actually starting to go into the databases, into the library, and starting to find sources dealing with this topic that are trying to answer your research question. And these are going to be what are called launch texts. These could be texts that you already found when you're doing Project 1 and Project 2, or they could be new texts that you find. But a launch text is just like the first article or first two books or first two articles that you read when you're doing research that get you started. So you're going to be starting to do some research and starting to find some of these sources. Okay. The other thing that you're going to be doing for this week is going to be completing your blog 4. And so again, I know I already said this, but please make sure you're doing these blogs because these will make your life so much easier when it comes to actually doing the project. And so let's take a look at blog 4. So for this blog, you're going to begin by reviewing the research questions you drafted in Project 1. So if you remember at the end of your research guide, I asked you to kind of post some questions that you had about the community, about any major topics. And so we're going to be revising these into kind of more coherent research questions. We'll talk about what a good research question is here in just a minute. So you're going to be reviewing the research questions you drafted in Project 1, as well as the information, text, issues, and questions you've encountered in text from your discourse community since completing Project 1. So anything that you found since. Draft or revise several potential research questions that you will pursue for your research project this semester, at least 3. Again, make sure you have at least 3. And write a list of research plans for each set of questions. So remember, you did a research plan already, so this was just like, this is what I want to know about this topic. This is where I might look, this database or this text or whatever. These are some keywords that I might use. What texts have you read related to this topic so far? What databases or other library sources will you begin researching these questions? What is your timeline for looking into these questions for Project 3? So again, so basically you're identifying at least 3 research questions So, what are the economic costs of stem cell research? And then you're answering these questions for each one. So it's like 9 questions total. Keep in mind you'll ultimately select one set of questions to focus on your research project, and I will give you feedback on what seems to be a productive route. So again, I'll look at these and say, hey, this might be a good idea, or I might stay away from this one for whatever reason. But for now, think about these several possibilities and imagine what you might do. To pursue these questions, your post should be at least 150 words long. So just to recap, all I'm asking you to do is revise or come up with 3 research questions and then answer these questions for each one. Done. Okay, so now let's talk for a minute before we're done about what a research question actually is. Okay, so I've got a resource that I want to kind of use to help think about like what a research question is and what a good one is and why we use them. So I've got this PDF right here that I'm going to be posting under the Project 3 folder as well. And this is going to be dealing with kind of what is a research question, why do you use it, what is the purpose of it. And so it's a good source to kind of take a look at if you're getting stuck. But it's also a good source that we can use to actually think about what a research question actually should be doing. So let's take a look at what a research question actually is. Now, a lot of you have already started to develop some really good ones, right? You identified a topic from your community, and then you asked a question about it. So a research question is similar to that, but it's also a little bit more complex. So let's take a look. A research question guides and centers your research. It should be clear and focused, as well as synthesize multiple sources to present your unique argument. Now, in this case, we're not exactly presenting an argument or dealing with an argument, but we are going to be asking research questions about your unique or your specific topic. Even if your instructor has given you a specific assignment, the research question should be ideally something that you are interested in or care about. Be careful to avoid the all-about paper and question that can be answered in a few factual statements. Now, what this resource is going to do is it's going to give us a kind of a good checklist and some examples of what good research questions are, just so we understand, what a complex research question should do. And so here's an example of kind of a bad question turned into a good research question. And then we'll take a look at the checklist. So a research question has to be something complex, something that asks an important question and whose answers might actually address some real concerns from the field that they originate from. So for example, why did the chicken cross the road is not a good question because it doesn't address any kind of specifics. The question doesn't address which chicken or which road. Similarly, the question could be answered by a hypothetical internet search. How many chickens crossed Broad Street in Durham, North Carolina on February, blah, blah, blah. So again, you want to make sure that your question isn't something you could just Google. So it shouldn't be like a yes or no or a kind of statistic. For example, like a research question couldn't be like, okay, who won the Super Bowl last year? We could just Google that and look it up. It shouldn't be able to be answered easily. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to think about like a question that you have about your community or about the topic that you're interested in, and to start to develop some questions around that. And so take a look at this resource, read through it, but then we've also got this good checklist that we can use, whether you're in the humanities or you're in the sciences. And these are things that will help you kind of figure out how to make a complex research question. So one, is the question something that you care about? I hope so. If it's not, then don't research it. Pick a different question. But also, is it arguable? So again, this gets to the yes or no or the Google search. Is the answer to this question going to be something that you could actually take a stance on? Is the research question a new spin on an old idea, or does it solve a problem? So again, are we adding to the field? Are we asking new questions, or are we asking new questions about old topics, whatever it is? Is it too broad or too narrow? Again, make sure that it's kind of fits the timeline that you have for this project. Is the research question researchable within the given frame, and what information is needed? Okay, so again, I'll be posting that resource right under this Project 3 thing right here. But just to recap, all we're looking for this week is for you to finish Project 2, for you to kind of do the reading that we're thinking about, to start to research the topic that you're interested in, and to complete Blog 4, which is asking you to do that, to think about that research. So let me know if you have any questions. I'll be providing you feedback on your rough drafts, within the next day or two, so you'll have that. But then really what I want you to think about is like how all the hard work you've been doing so far is going to kind of continue to evolve into Project 3. So what I don't want you guys to do is to feel like these are just busy work, busy work, busy work. This is all building towards something. So again, let me know if you have any questions or if you want to schedule a Skype conference. I'm here, so I will talk to you guys later.